In this property, there was a particularly irksome damp patch that appeared on the side of the chimney breast after being away in Australia for a month. It's notable that there's no brown staining which you would expect with penetrating damp. This leads us to suspect that it's condensation. You can see that condensation is forming in the property, so we have a pretty good suspicion that that's the primary cause. There are some marginally brown stains, but this is often the colour that lining paper goes.
So just to explain, this is caused by condensation. That's caused by high levels of humidity through insufficient ventilation, especially while you were away, insufficient heat and insufficient ventilation. You would have needed to run a dehumidifier, which is something that everyone should do whenever leaving a property empty, especially for a month in winter. I think that's the primary causes, is being away, but you've always got a challenge in this room, not least because every property is going to have areas of heat loss, and in this case it's around the chimney breast, because the chimney breast is formed by essentially two walls as you have on the normal outside, but with a void in the middle, and so you get a lot of heat loss. Plus you've got the eaves, you'll see in the thermal image that I'm going to show you in a second, where you're getting the heat loss, but all the damp lines up with the heat loss. There are areas of dampness on this wall. They're not showing, so there's nothing to be worried about, but most Victorian properties had coal used at some stage, and it can release, or it tends to release, hygroscopic salts. They're not showing, but if this room became very damp, they're liable to come through to the external wall, and they look and act very much like condensation. If you look at some other videos, you'll see the effects of them, but that's the other thing to be aware of. You've got some pools of water here and some mold, and this is the same thing. It's high humidity causing condensation and mold. There's what looks like a damp patch here but isn't, and you'll see later on in a video. So that's the cause and the reason for your cause. The solution is, I'd say, short term, run a dehumidifier, close the bathroom door, keep the window open for half an hour at least to get the vapor out, cook with tops on pots and pans to reduce the vapor from the kitchen, close the kitchen door and have the window open after cooking for about half an hour if you can, and run a dehumidifier. I'd run it 24/7, and you can have it in the bedroom initially and then move it downstairs. And if you're drying clothes internally, especially if you're using the air rack, the heated rack for drying clothes, you want to use a dehumidifier, and use a 20 litre plus dehumidifier. I'll give you some recommendations from which I don't personally try all of them, although in one property I have 4 dehumidifiers running almost constantly.
You can see the heat loss in the area of condensation. Cold causes condensation. Likewise, a damp wall is a poor insulator and will also look colder. It will become self-perpetuating as the wall becomes colder, so it attracts more condensation. You'll see that there's a lot of heat loss in any roof of this style, but particularly between the rafters. It may be that there is less insulation than would nowadays be put there. It's particularly notable at the base of the roof, such as above the headboard. Of course, children are wonderful, but they do create a lot of washing, a lot of extra heat for food preparation. Just next to the light switch, there's an area that appears to be put damp, but actually isn't. you'll see with this damp meter it's normal levels. Here I'm looking at the roof. I don't expect to find any damage, but it's always good to have a look. The lead work will cause some heat loss, being metal, but obviously you need it as flashing. The flaunching looks good, the chimney pots look in good order. Nothing to be concerned about. Obviously this isn't a roofing report.